Hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Bloom, host of Soul Wisdom Abundance, Create Wealth Through Spiritual Health. I'm thrilled that you're here and truly honored that you are going to spend the next hour or so with myself and my guest as we continue the conversation about how to shift and change your understanding of money so that you can now begin to create wealth through more joy and ease. And the way that I talk about that is by helping to bring money back to its roots, which is really in divine energy, in source energy, and to help you bring your own understanding of yourself back into your own source and divine energy. And that as we marry those two together, the relationship with money becomes something really new and different. And as we are in these really uncertain times when there's a lot of fear and worry and feels like a lot of scarcity maybe around in ways that we've never experienced before, I think that having that structure to come back to is really helpful. It helps to work out that fear and that worry. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't want to talk about the fear and that we don't want to talk about the worry and the anxiety. We've got to meet ourselves where we are. And I think that I have the perfect guest today to have this conversation. Carolyn and I joked because when I reached out to her, which is maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago,
Yeah.
I thought I was inviting you to talk about, really lean on your bookkeeping skills, the part of you that really knows how to work with the physical aspect of money and how to intertwine that with the spiritual. But when we had our conversation about what we wanted to talk about, the world really had exploded and businesses had exploded and there was a lot of angst going on. And so what better time than two people who know a lot about money, who talk to money, we'll let that secret out of the bag, have a conversation about working through the fear and uncertainty and how we can maybe shift our money mindset to our advantage during this time. So with that, I want to give a little bit more information about Carolynn before we start, and then we're going to dive right in. So after working with more than 100 bookkeeping clients, Carolynn was inspired to empower people to find joy in their relationship with money. Her approach is practical and holistic with no judgment, helping clients find abundance and transform the way they think about and interact with money. Carolynn is an author and a speaker and the founder of the Money Empowerment Project. She's passionate about helping women business owners and soulpreneurs become BFFs with their money. I just love that phrase. Her international best-selling book, The Land of Plenty, A Soulpreneur's Guide to Finding Joy, Possibility, and Abundance Through Money Empowerment, has been featured on the Spirited Woman's Top 12 Book Pick list for 2020. And Carolynn loves the sunshine, and her happy place is anywhere near the water. You can often find her with her toes in the pool or in the sand, and she believes she was a mermaid in her past life.
Yes.
And I think we can draw on that magic, right? That's something to be really helpful. So welcome. I'm really glad that we get to have this conversation today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's such an important conversation we're about ready to have.
Yeah, I know. I've got some goosebumps actually. So really curious about what's going to come up because, we could throw around words like it's an unprecedented time. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of worry. So why don't we start with what you're seeing and what you're hearing and what you're experiencing now, and then we can kind of talk about where to go from there.
Yeah. So, as a bookkeeper, I really feel like I've been on the front line of all of the fear and anxiety around money for the past month or so. I've watched clients who were in probably some of the best financial positions go from having their best year ever or even their best couple of months ever go to zero in sales in a matter of 10 days. And it's been heart-wrenching. I've been on a roller coaster along with my clients. But then on the other side, I see some clients who really are thriving in an environment like this because of the services that they offer, which has been very interesting to see the two comparatively Um, and really, I think the most important thing is just to acknowledge that everybody is in the same boat right now. There's so much uncertainty, and that uncertainty, even when you're doing well, brings up a lot of anxiety and fear.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Right. When we don't know something, like we were talking right before the show, giving you the information about the segments, and I like, I like to know. I want to know what I'm stepping into. And right now there's nothing to lean back on to say, oh, okay, well, we can expect X and then Y is going to happen. And then by Z, things are really going to be back. And, because I don't think things are going to go back to normal, right?
Yeah,
Or how they were before. Do you?
right. No, I think that we are at a moment where we get to decide what our new reality is going to look like, because I definitely don't think we're going back to what we believed was our normal before this.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that I mean, it's not that things were terrible, but I do think there are a lot of things, especially in the money realm, that really could use some readjusting.
absolutely. And I think it's our beliefs about money and what money really is. Over the past probably 2 weeks or so, I've really tried to focus on getting back, as you talked about, to the root of what money is. And I've reached out, I've really looked at some of my key relationships and the people that I support that also support me, and really looking at, are these equal exchanges? There's a lot of talk about, don't ever trade your services or whatever, but really money is just kind of this underlying energy that helps us trade those services. And now that money has kind of, I don't know, turned into something that's so different, I've really tried to focus on getting back to, I have a service that I need to provide and people want, and I have services that I need in order to support myself spiritually, financially, business wise, household wise. And is there an equal exchange that makes sense, that can be um, symbolically traded with that money? Because I think getting back to the soul of what money truly is what's going to help us create the reality that we all want to see as we move forward. So let me give you an example. I
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
I have a coach, for lack of a better word, that I've worked with for quite some time, for probably 3 years, and she has always wanted to work with me on her money mindset, but it's just never come together. As we were talking last year, she's like, I think, 2020 is going to be my year to do it. I'm like, great, let's talk as, things start to unfold. Well, it became really apparent the past couple of weeks that she really wanted and needed my services right
Mhm.
now. And I still really need a business coach. And I think in most people's minds, like, oh my gosh, business coaching off the table. I can't afford that.
Right.
How many times do you hear people say, I can't afford that right now?
Yeah. Yep.
But what we've done is we've decided that her services are the same value as my services. And so we're going to exchange $3,333.
Nice.
Um, and we're actually giving each other that money, but we're essentially exchanging that money. And what that does is it's just created $3,333 of income for me and $3,333 of income for her that wasn't there before.
Right, right. And it's expansive for both of you, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Love it.
And on top of that, not only do we generate that income, we get those services that we both need. And so if you take that example and apply it to everything you're doing, then all of a sudden there's this huge possibility around money now that I think so many people are not recognizing because you're so wrapped up into the fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You've got your hands up like this, which again, we each completely understand, right? We have
Yes.
each had our own meltdowns. We have each had our own heartbreaking moments talking with other people, and what if there's possibility here,
Yeah.
right? And it goes from, if I'm a kinesthetic person, so as you told that story, it really literally could feel the expansiveness of the situation. And when you bring expansiveness into other places, the possibilities are really going to start to grow,
Yes,
right? And it and
definitely.
it and it really does get back to the root of money. When I first started this work and started talking to money, I asked about the purpose of money, and I saw these really beautiful ribbons, like just sort of playfully back and forth and all around. And really what money was showing me was, hey, this what we're here to do is to help souls exchange their services. That's it. And if I'm a hat maker and you're somebody who raises chickens, what's the value of hats to chickens? Well, all right, well, let's put money in the middle. But if we can take money out of the middle for a while, possibilities are also very present.
Right. And I also feel like sometimes we're so focused on just spending or making money, but if you look at your own little micro communities, so it doesn't just have to be two people exchanging services. There could be maybe five people. And so I pay one person to cut my hair, that person pays a concert venue for concert tickets, that concert venue pays for advertising, and that advertising company then pays me to do their books. So
Right.
it goes around in this circle, and every time it exchanges hands, it expands
Beautifully said.
and
So
generates.
exactly, generates. That's a really important word, right?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, so we're going to pause here for a moment. And what I'd like us to talk when we get into the next segment is a little bit about how we get in our own way with the generating. So we'll pause here as we take a quick break. For right now, you're listening to Soul Wisdom Abundance with myself, Jennifer Bloom, and Carolynn Bottino. We'll be back soon. So we're back on Soul Wisdom Abundance with me, your host, Jennifer Bloom, and my guest, Carolynn Bottino. So Carolynn, before we dive back into the conversation, can you let people know how to get in touch with you, how to find your information?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the best way is to go to my website, which is moneyempowermentproject.com. On that website, I have a couple of things that might be of interest as we talk about this conversation.
Yeah.
The first is that I have a Money Mojo quiz. I won't go into that right now, but that's there as a resource. And then the second option is that I have a free chapter to my book that is on that website. And especially right now, it's actually kind of the manifesto of the land of plenty. And right now, more than ever, I feel like that information is so critical, but because it's all of the spiritual aspects around money. And so that is on my website as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I'm really going to encourage people. I'm about 3/4 of the way through your Land of Plenty book, and it is full of so much helpful information. And I love your storytelling style.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I'm really gonna really gonna encourage people to take a look at that. So okay, so before we took a break, we were talking about this idea of exchanging services. We were talking about expansion and generation. And I kind of want to take a step to the side for a moment and ask this question of you. I think that one of the things, we've got all these wonderful new possibilities, right? And I also see that people's fear and worry and anxiety is kind of triggering their own internal money stories, right? Money comes with a really heavy, it can come, I should say, with a really heavy set of emotions. I mean, we can have a lot of shame or embarrassment of how we handle money or how we should have been prepared. I've heard from people like, oh, I knew better than this. I should have done this. I should have had this much in savings and I don't. And so then it ends up sort of in that beating up place, right?
Mhm.
So I'm curious what you're thinking about people's money stories and how they're getting triggered in this time that has a lot of its own fear and worry in it.
Yeah. Oh man, that's such a good question. So I actually start everything that I do with people's money stories. So my book starts with my own money story, and it explains why it's so important. And as if you have not explored your money story, it's probably the number one most important thing you can do, especially right now. I was actually interviewed for another podcast when all of this was happening, and it was kind of before it all went down, and it was a very joyful conversation about how to find joy in your relationship with money. And afterwards, I hesitated to post it for about a week because it seemed
Mm,
so, I don't know, just surface, because everything had changed in a week. But really, what it came down to was that now more than ever, your money story matters, because you're going to start seeing things and reacting to things because of that money story. And it's like an onion that has all these layers, and you think you understand it, and then something else comes up.
so true.
And so my money story was that I had to work really hard in order to earn money or to have money. And I see myself falling back into that pattern right now. Because
Mhm.
there's so many people that are like, wow, I don't think I can apply for the government loans because that's a handout and I should never take a handout. Or I should never think about putting my mortgage into forbearance because that's irresponsible. But the thing is that the world has completely changed. And what was perceived as irresponsible or shameful, or whatever that emotion was that was tied to it, um, isn't necessarily true. And my question is that even your story? Is that even your emotion? Are you taking on other people's emotions? Your parents, your grandparents? There's so many things out there that are influencing how we believe in money and cultural beliefs. And right now, especially, there's a lot of talk about how this compares to the Great Depression.
Mhm.
And it's been interesting because I've had a few people ask questions about, oh, should I go get cash out of the bank? And it's kind of an interesting thing to think about, because back in the, 1920s, there was no digital banking.
Exactly. Right. Cash was king, right?
Yeah, and physical cash meant
Right.
you had money,
Right.
whereas
Right.
now it's all kind of in the air.
Right.
It's a very unreal concept, but we think of it as a real concept.
Right. So you look at your bank account and, think about it in terms of stacks of dollars,
Right.
right? We're so far removed from the gold standard that we don't even think about it as gold anymore, right? It's this paper money, which still isn't even really anything that's real, right? It's a
Right.
symbol. It's a symbol that we've all agreed upon.
Right. Yeah. If you went to the bank and said, give me my dollar bills that equate to what's in my bank account, and if every single person on this earth went to the bank and said that, like, there is not physically enough paper
Right.
dollar bills to supply that ask.
Hmm.
And so really our money is as much energy in our digital banking world as it is in how we exchange it as well. And
So
if we start, yeah, and if we start to really think about that, it all of a sudden is like, oh yeah, maybe it's not as heavy as we think it is.
hmm Yeah, and so how do you help people? I mean, I have my own answer to this question. I'm really curious about yours. But how do you help people, or what's the one thing you would say to somebody about giving themselves permission to let go of some of their money story, right? Because, I can see my family has always been very precise with money, and we do the right thing in my family, right? But a big story about my granddad, even though he and my grandmother were renting a home, they redid all the windows in the house, and they did it the right way. They stripped it. They didn't just paint over everything. They stripped the old paint and then they did the new application. And you know so that same rules apply to money in my family. You do things the right way. You have the right kinds of savings accounts. You have the right kinds of insurance. But I've had to do a lot of looking at that, owning my own business and just some of the ups and downs that I have had to say, yeah, I can let some of that go so that I can move into what works for me, what works in
Hmm.
this family. So what would you say about being able to give that permission of doing things the way that work now, um, as opposed to these rules that we've all been living by?
Yeah, I think the key is first acknowledging what those are and
Yeah.
how they're showing up in your life. Because if you can recognize how something is interplaying in your life and recognize that it's not working, and then take a step back and question why you even have that belief in the first place, then I think that questioning is what gives you the freedom to decide whether or not you should keep it or leave it. And there's no judgment, because honestly, like, some people have have those stories that still work for them. Maybe in your life you still think, yes, there is a right way to do money, and the right way for me is this,
Mhm.
whereas another person might not have that same belief, and that's okay. That's We're all different people. And that's what's so interesting, being where I sit with people and their money, is that I have this amazing privilege of seeing how somebody interacts with money and how they treat money and how much they perceive they have, and actually see what's in their bank accounts and on their credit cards.
Sure.
Like,
Right.
so I
Right.
mean, I have this amazing vantage point to see all of this, and I can tell you from this vantage point that we're all very different. I mean, somebody who has this mass feeling of abundance might only make, 20 or $30,000 a year, whereas somebody who has millions in the bank could feel like they're not abundant.
Yeah.
And those feelings come from our money stories and from our interaction with money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so if there is one thing that I wish I had a magic wand about, to use for, is the sense of guilt and shame.
Mhm.
Those energies are so low. You look at, David Hawkins did a scale of a variety of different levels of being states, and shame is at the bottom. And in fact, he says when you're in that place of shame, you really need somebody to help you out of it because you cannot see past it. And that's the one place where I wish that we could really remove the taboo, and the shame around this resource that we all use. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. I'm sure there's somebody out on a hut on an island with, somewhere that isn't using money, but we all use it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that shame piece is big. I mean, it's because whether or not you have a lot of money or you don't have a lot of money, there is always guilt and shame around money. So I have clients that, like I said, have millions, and their shame and guilt might come from actually having the money.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody who doesn't have money feels guilty because they should have done different, something different as far as their savings accounts go, or they should have chosen a different profession, or whatever their shame and guilt is. But those two emotions are still the same.
Yeah.
And I feel like what's happening right now is kind of leveling the playing field for some people, because um, all the rules are out the window.
Yeah.
So what else is possible here?
Right, right. Oh, I'm just writing it down because we're going to need to go to break here in a second. But I love that phrase of leveling the playing field. And let's talk about that in the next segment. Okay. Because I think
Perfect.
that's, how do we do that? How do we, for somebody who's either looking at it from, I don't quite have enough, to somebody who has what looks like more than enough, but still has those same emotions. Okay. All right, so let's take a quick break. You are listening to Soul Wisdom Abundance here on Transformation Talk Radio, and we will be back in just a moment. Well, hello and welcome back. We're talking on soul wisdom, abundance, creating wealth through spiritual health. I'm Jennifer Bloom, your host, and our guest, Carolynn Bottino. So we are talking about a lot of different aspects about how things are changing in the money world based on this pandemic and all of the ripples that have happened because of it. And before we came into break, we were talking about leveling the playing field and the opportunities that are present um, because of the situation that we're in. So I'm curious what you have to share about more about this idea of leveling the playing field and how we can each step into that and step into the possibilities in a new way.
Yeah, so I think that as we are looking at how we want to build our new reality, I think that we all have a responsibility to first and foremost treat each other with respect. I think there's been so many times in our society where money has made the decision over people. And, our healthcare industry is crashing right now because of that. And I don't want to get into the politics and, all of that,
Oh,
but it,
oh, I've got some soapboxes I could step up on.
oh, me too. But,
Right, right.
yeah, but, there's been so many decisions that have been made in our lives and around us, and maybe that we've made ourselves that have been from a place of, I need, I need, I need, instead of the greater good. And part of what I talk about in the end of my book is really stepping up to the idea of we can all consciously change the way we interact with money. And what's so interesting to me is I published my book at the end of last year in 2019, having no idea what was about ready to happen. And as I've revisited what I said in that book, it is so true. It's just been amplified even greater than I could have ever imagined, because I feel like there are so many opportunities for us to hire somebody for the services that we need in a very respectful way, instead of approaching it like, oh, I'm going to mark up my prices as much as I possibly can in order to, doesn't matter who I screw over or whatever the situation is. Like that type of energy around money, I feel like it's kind of going out the window right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The word that pops up as you say all of that is greed,
Yeah,
right? Like there's
absolutely.
been a tremendous amount of greed everywhere on the planet. I mean, if you look at the history of man, right? Mankind, their
Hmm.
greed has certainly played a role in a lot of different ways. And I think that this really is an amazing opportunity. And one of the reasons why I think it is so important to bring out this message about the spiritual side of money isn't to, again, shame people into for wanting things, because we're here. I live on a physical planet. We have physical things. We like to take trips and vacations, and we like to have comfort around us, and that's all good, right? To be in a place of abundance and prosperity is okay. That's a beautiful thing. But the problem is that when you reach for those things and you don't understand that money is limitless, then there's the fear of, oh, wait a minute, I see that person over there who's getting this huge piece of the pie. I better raise my prices. I better, gouge, whatever, so that I can get what I want. And it really comes from that place of fear, right? If you get yours before I get mine,
Yeah.
then right. And that is so not true. We
And
all
that idea that there's not enough. I mean,
right,
that's really where that greed comes from, is that fear of not enough.
right.
And um and that's kind of, well, not kind of, it isn't true. I mean, the truth is there is plenty. That, I mean, granted, my book is called The Land of Plenty.
Right, right, right,
um,
right.
but there is plenty. Money truly is infinite because it does regenerate, like we were talking about earlier. And if you come at it at a place of knowing that is the truth about money, then all of a sudden the greed kind of dissipates. Because if you look at what's happening in our healthcare system and what's been going on for a very long time, the insurance companies, the drug companies, how it all works, it's coming from this place of we've got to charge a ton because there's not enough people paying into our system in order to make it work, which isn't true.
Right.
It's just not true at all. And now that this is happening, you can see all of the faults and it's just crumbling to pieces. And so I think it's an amazing example of that idea of plenty. And I actually just wrote a blog post about this idea of plenty and toilet paper.
Yeah, please share, please share. We've got to talk about the toilet paper.
Yes. So to me, money is a lot like toilet paper. And we can all relate with that feeling of, oh my gosh, what if there's not enough? What if I can never get more? Because we go to the grocery store and we see those empty shelves with nothing on it. But the truth is that our society's ability to make more toilet paper has not changed. There's exactly the same amount of toilet paper in this world as there was a month ago. There's not more need for it, i.e., there are no more people going to the bathroom than there was before this
That's right.
happened.
Right.
And what's changed, however, is that people freaked out and it's now sitting in somebody's storage unit somewhere or in their basement or on their shelves rather than on the grocery store shelves. So it's just shifted. And money is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just shifted. Where it sits, there are just as many dollars and just as many opportunities to make money right now as there was a month ago. And I don't want to make light because I understand there's so many people in a state of panic that are, out of jobs and
Right.
really struggling. I don't want to say that that's not happening because it absolutely is, but you still have services that people need, whether that means that you're a business owner or even if you are somebody that is a bartender or whatever your position is that got eliminated, you still have skills that somebody needs. And what's shifted is just where and how, as a society, we are going to use and need those services. And so it's just, we're taking this pause right now in order to sort it all out. And that's where that possibility and opportunity comes in, is that we now get to decide how we're going to interact with each other and interact with money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so if we were to speak for a moment to those people, right, who, I mean, I have been one of those people. I have had $10 in my checking account, and it was more than a week and a half to payday and having 3 children. And it's like, how creative can I get with what's in the pantry, right? So, that's bottom, right?
Yeah.
And I know, and I was still fortunate in that I had a home, I had a house, I had a roof over my head, I had plenty of clothing. I'm here in Minneapolis. I was still able to pay for heat, right? Um, but when we're sitting in the middle of what feels like scarcity, what do you say to somebody about those first few thoughts about reaching for that understanding of abundance and knowing that, yeah, that there is possibility?
Yeah, I think, that is a really tough question to answer because I've been there too. And it's almost like, I love how you said when you're in that emotion of shame and guilt, you need somebody to bring you out. And I think that it's kind of the same thing with that immense fear.
Mhm.
So first off, I go back to your money story. Um, and I applaud you if you're listening to this. This is a very good step as well. I think a lot of it is working on your mindset and knowing, trusting that there is more out there. And I know that's easier said than done, but it's just acknowledging that there's possibility. Because once you acknowledge that there's possibility, then there's possibility. Whereas
Absolutely.
if you're like, nope, not going to happen.
Right. And be mired in it. Right. Like,
Yes.
this is real. These are facts. There's something that Abraham Hicks always talks about. And one of the things that they say is, whatever is in your bank account, whatever is in your present moment is old news. right?
Mhm.
It's based on past thinking. It's based on past mindset. You can't even, you really can't even look at it without saying, yeah, this is just old. And so if you can get into that habit of looking beyond and saying, well, what do I want to create next? This is here. And what's next? What can be next? What's the
Absolutely.
possibility? Who can I be? What can I shift this into? Who can I reach out to? Right. And that
Yes.
comes back to the whole kindness. And I think
How can
that,
I be of service? Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
yeah,
That is the
absolutely. Yep.
key.
Yeah.
How can I be of service? And what's
Hmm.
been interesting to me is this is all unfolded, and I go back to my book again, but I tell the story of getting fired in my book. I was working in corporate America and I got fired for doing what I thought was, giving and giving and giving more than I ever should have. And it felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. But what changed is that I was able to say, what skills do I have? What should I do? So if you're in that situation where you're feeling like you have nothing, start to take an inventory of what skills do you have. Don't even worry about how you're going to find a job to work those skills. Just take an inventory. Take an inventory of what you like to do. And I promise taking those steps is going to make a huge difference, not only in your mindset, but in the ability to take action on that. Because as this has all happened, it's felt amazingly familiar to me
Mm,
because it's like, oh, yeah, that rug's been pulled out from underneath me again. But guess what? I'm still able to say, huh, interesting. What can I do? How can I be of service? What skills do I have that people need? Those are really great, expansive questions. And once you start playing with those questions and playing in that energy, again, what's possible there?
absolutely. And that reinvention, right?
Mhm.
Right when you're in the expansiveness of it, that's when you have access to all kinds of things that you never would have thought of before.
Absolutely.
Well, Carolyn, I'm really, really delighted that you were here today. I really appreciate everything that you've shared. I'm going to again encourage people to look for your Land of Plenty book, to visit your Money Empowerment Project site for more information. And thank you for everything
Thank you for
today.
having me. It's been a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Wonderful. All right, so we're going to wrap up here with Carolyn and take a short break. And when we come back, I'm going to walk you through an exercise to help do a little bit of this mindset shifting. So we'll be back soon. Welcome back to Soul Wisdom Abundance. I am your host, Jennifer Bloom, and I want to build on a couple of the topics that Carolyn and I were talking about, and spend a little bit of this last part of the podcast talking about the energetics behind a couple of the topics we were speaking about. So let's start here. When it seems like there isn't enough money, right? So here we are, we're in this unprecedented time. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of worry. I personally know a lot of people who have been furloughed or laid off, or even if you are still in your job, wondering how things are going to shift and change, right? So if you're in a place of feeling like there's not enough, one of the first things that we tend to do, one of the first questions that we tend to ask is, how can I have more? Right. So it's almost that it's almost an instinctual kind of a thing. Like, there isn't enough in the bank account. How do I make more? And it's a reasonable question, right? We all need to have food on our tables and clothing and all of that. And the issue is that when you start to look at the energetics of what you're asking about, when you're in a place of not enough and saying, how can I make more? You are really in the energy of lack, right? You are, if you were to feel the vibration of those of how you're feeling, right? And how we feel is how we interact with the universe. It's how we tell the universe what we want more of. So if you're in a place of not enough, asking for more, what you're impressing out into the formless form of the divine is lack. And so what you get back is more experiences that that are going to give you more of the same, more of the lack. So what we want to do here is, instead of beating ourselves up for creating more lack or not having enough, is we really want to start asking a different question. And this question comes out of the understanding, right, that we are all part of divinity. We are all part of source energy, and we all have access to the unlimited resources of the divine. And Carolyn was speaking a lot about money recirculating, right? So it's a similar principle. There's money, and it goes out into the world and it comes back. But the thing is it isn't just that money is circulating. The divine has the ability to infuse as much money into that circulation pattern as needed. There isn't this one limited amount that keeps going out and coming back. We want to keep circulating the money, and it goes around the globe, and we can know that we as divine beings have access to whatever it is that we need. So if that's true, we can also know that if we don't have enough, or we're not feeling like we have enough, all that means is that there's a kink somewhere in our flow, right? So if you even think about it as, if you have a bathroom sink, and we have multiple bathroom sinks in my house that tend to back up a lot. I don't know what it is about the plumbing in this house, but we always have we're continually having to use Drano. Anyway, I digress. So if you have a sink, right, that's backed up, you don't just keep adding more water, right? That would be I just need more, I just need more, I just need more. What do you really want to do? You want to take the clog or the kink out of your plumbing, right? Same thing with money. If there's not enough coming in, there's that kink in your flow. So you need a different question. So the question that I would suggest is, what expansion is my soul ready for, so that I can more easily come into alignment with this unlimited money flow, right? So when Carolyn and I were talking about your money story, those can be kinks, the stories that we carry, whether the stories are beliefs, I have to work really hard, is what Carolyn kept talking about, or the family history on my side, which is to do things the right way and always be very mindful of how you're doing things, right? Those are examples of what some of the kinks might be in your flow. Now, this is very personalized, right? You might have had a family who taught you how to work really hard, and that's not something that impacts your flow. Or again, you might be somebody who enjoys having all of these different accounts and doing things in a very very routine way, right? And it doesn't bother your flow. The kinks in money flow are very personal. So you want to be able to ask that question of the divine, of your soul, and you can do it in whatever way that feels right to you. If you are somebody who knows your soul languages, that's a really good way to connect in with your soul and ask that question. Or you can simply ask the divine, what am I ready for? What am I ready to release? Or what am I ready to align with? What am I ready to step into that's new, that can take out that kink? And if you'll notice, as you're asking that kind of a question, you are in a much more expansive place. You're in a place of possibility. Carolyn and I talked a lot about that, right, throughout this the earlier conversation of what else is possible, what's more, what could be here. So where can I expand to allow that flow to come through? And so when you're in that expansive place, now you're in a position of growth. You're in a position of development. You're in a place of being able to receive in a brand new way. Let me give you a couple of quick examples. So I had a client who had worked quite hard through her early career, and she had she had a degree in one area, but as she gained experience, she gained experiences in lots of new areas. And she wanted to take these new skills out into the community in a new way. But she was feeling really blocked because she was feeling really blocked about it. She'd put out some proposals and it just really hadn't heard anything back from people. And what we discovered once we started working together was she was really worried that she didn't have the right credentials. She was worried that because she hadn't gotten the right letters after her name, that people were not going to take her seriously. Now, in some industries, you need specific credentials, but she was working on training. And in the areas that she was looking at, it wasn't always necessary to have a specific certification. It was her own belief about her lack of credentials that was kinking her flow. As soon as she allowed herself to trust that she had the experience that she needed and she released that fear of not having the credentials, the next time she put out a proposal, it was accepted. Okay, so it's really about taking a look at how am I, we could step for the side for a moment. It's getting back into the energetics of it. Where am I holding that place of lack? Where am I holding a place of fear? Where am I holding a place of worry in relationship to money? Okay. And as you start asking a new question, as you start stepping into that place of expansiveness and possibility, you are going to find that you are much more easily connected into a brand new flow of money. Okay. This is something that can take a little bit of looking at. So just be gentle with yourself as you move through this process. And if it is something that you would like some help with, please reach out. This is the work that I do, and I would be honored to help you find those kinks and straighten them out to bring a new flow. All right, everybody. So we are going to wrap up our conversation here. Thank you so much for being present and tuning in to Soul Wisdom Abundance. I'm here the first and the third Fridays of each month, and I look forward to talking with you next month. So until then, everybody, prosperous blessings.